If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. A proud promise from New York that if you work hard enough, if you're tough enough, this city will give you everything. But what they didn't say is that promise is only for the approximately 400,000 millionaires living here. What about the rest? They are huddled on the sidewalks of Manhattan. No dreams, no shelter. Just a piece of silver tarp and cold loneliness amidst the concrete jungle. A nation that always preaches about freedom, human rights and human dignity. But even in the heart of America's wealthiest city, hundreds of thousands of people are being forgotten, living precariously as if they never existed. The government is almost powerless. Residents are advised to stay away from certain areas after 9 p.m. And the police with the most advanced equipment no longer dare to patrol at night. In this video, let's explore a New York that is collapsing from within. The same Manhattan of shantytowns, forgotten souls, and a cycle of decline, where there seems to be no way out. Be prepared, because what you are about to see is not just their story, but could also be a silent warning about a near future that could befall us. New York, the most dazzling symbol of the United States, where the lights of Times Square never dim, and where glass towers that touch the clouds reflect the dreams of millions. The city was once called the economic and cultural heart of the world, where the Statue of Liberty still holds high, its torch illuminating the hopes of those seeking freedom. But try getting off at a subway station in Midtown at 11 p.m. Amidst the familiar sounds of the subway and the hurried footsteps, you'll see figures covered with thin blankets lying still on benches at the foot of the stairs or huddled quietly beside vending machines. They lay there silently like shadows, present yet excluded from social visibility. Unfeeling mobile bodies amidst a city that never sleeps. These social zombies, not because they've lost their souls, but because we've stopped seeing them as other ordinary human beings. According to a report from the Coalition for the Homeless, as of early 2025, over 350,000 people in New York will be without permanent housing. Each night, only about 1 to 3 are able to access temporary shelters. The rest, they wandered aimlessly on the sidewalks in their cars, knocked on friends' doors, or set up makeshift tents right at the foot of skyscrapers. Notably, nearly 1/3 of Manhattan's homeless population is over 60 years old. People who once paid taxes, voted, and believed in the stability that America promised them. A figure that can't help but send shivers down one's spine, especially when it's not just happening in little-known slums. It's happening everywhere, from dilapidated buildings in the Bronx to neighborhoods that were once symbols of prosperity like Chelsea or Williamsburg. Dilapidated rows of tents sprang up along the roadside. The stench of garbage and urine hung heavy in the air, creating a chaotic and haunting scene, right in the heart of one of the wealthiest cities in the world. No one wants to believe that Central Park, once a symbol of peace and greenery in New York, now has elderly people sleeping on newspapers under trees. Or that Times Square, where LED lights shine brightly day and night, now has young mothers begging for milk for their children amidst the bustling crowds. But that's the truth. New York is facing a silent crisis today, where the homeless are no longer a minority, but have become a ghost silently infiltrating every corner of the city. But what caused tens of thousands of people in New York to be pushed to the margins of society, right in the middle of the richest city in the world, are their silent interest groups that are secretly maintaining this instability as an industry. Is it possible that in this so-called city that never sleeps, there are people who will never again dream of peaceful sleep? Manhattan was once the launchpad for dreams reaching for the sky. This is not only the headquarters of Wall Street, the world's most powerful financial center, but also the home of Broadway Central Park and a host of cultural icons that have shaped the image of America in the eyes of the world. For many, setting foot in Manhattan is like touching a part of the American dream, a place where anything is possible as long as you work hard enough. But by 2025, that Manhattan seems to exist only in movies and memories. Reality now consists of rows of tents stretching along the sidewalks in Hell's Kitchen or the Lower East Side, and lines of homeless people queuing from afternoon, just hoping to get a temporary bed in shelters that are already overcrowded. The smell of garbage, musty dampness, and fatigue permeated the subway stations, parks, and even the street corners that once hosted lavish fashion parties. Manhattan, once the starting point of the American dream, is now gradually becoming the endpoint for tens of thousands of lives. The latest statistics from the city show that Manhattan is now the most densely populated area for homelessness in all of New York, with tens of thousands of people lacking permanent housing. A city that can value each square meter of land at tens of thousands of dollars, yet doesn't have enough space for an elderly person to sleep peacefully without being driven away. Images like tents popping up in the middle of commercial avenues, homeless people huddling under subway stairs, or single mothers holding their children and begging passers-by for spare change right next to an Apple store are no longer exceptions. They have become part of the urban landscape. It's ironic that in a city where everything is glamorous, hundreds of thousands of people live in conditions even harsher than post-war times. The story isn't just about poverty. It's about a shift in social values when the people who once kept Manhattan running every day, restaurant servers, hotel cleaners, bus drivers, can no longer afford to live in the very city they contributed to. The American dream in this case is not being denied by failure, but is being eroded by the very speed of development it creates. Meanwhile, campaigns to clean up the homeless are carried out continuously in the name of maintaining urban security and image. But in reality, as the organization Coalition for the Homeless has pointed out, these actions only push the poor further away from support services. They don't address the root of the problem, they simply hide it. And new models like Safe Haven, despite high expectations, currently only meet a very small fraction of the actual need. A center in the Bronx has 80 beds, while up to 2,000 people sleep outdoors each night. Manhattan is no longer a place for everyone. It seems to be gradually becoming a closed island for the super rich, where the existence of those who cannot buy the right to stay is considered market waste. If Manhattan, with all its wealth, power, and prestige, can't even keep its most basic promise to those who live there, that everyone deserves a roof over their heads, then the question is, where is the American dream headed, if the very place it began is also where it ends? New York, a city dubbed the richest in the world with nearly 400,000 millionaires residing there, an increase of over 45% in just a decade. That's a figure that any country would have to look up to. But alongside that, wealth, a silent bleeding of the middle class is taking place. They are neither the poorest nor the richest people. They are teachers, nurses, engineers, city workers, once considered the backbone of society. But in New York right now, even an income of over $100,000 a year won't help you stay long-term. A Brooklyn native shared that despite having a stable job and a six-figure salary, she still couldn't afford a two-bedroom apartment in the neighborhood where she grew up. Finally, she had to leave, moving to New Jersey, leaving behind memories, community, and even a sense of belonging. The statistics show that the highest percentage of people leaving New York are in the income group below $172,000 per year, meaning not the poor, but the middle class. Of these, over a third left due to uncontrollable housing costs, including not only rent, but also property taxes, maintenance service, and daily living expenses. The bitter truth is an income of $200,000 to $300,000 per year, once considered a financial safety net, is no longer enough to live comfortably in major cities like New York, Chicago, or San Francisco. Some people choose to move to smaller cities like Asheville, North Carolina, to find a slower pace of life and lower housing costs. But as the crowds poured in, followed by investors' house prices in those safe havens also skyrocketed, causing the real estate bubble to spread nationwide. The city is getting richer, but it's no longer for the majority. The neighborhoods that were once home to generations of immigrants and working-class American families are now being redefined, not by community, but by profit per square foot. While the New York City government is implementing the City of Yes plan with the expectation of creating tens of thousands of new apartments within 15 years, many are asking, will 15 years be enough? How many people will stay to wait until those apartments are built? The middle class, once considered the backbone of America, is now being pushed back both geographically and spiritually. They can no longer stay in the big cities. no longer able to access the best career opportunities. They no longer feel welcome in the very space they once helped build. When the dream of home ownership becomes a privilege for the minority, when cities turn into playgrounds for those too rich to feel deprivation, then who is the American dream really for? Or is it just a beautiful poster stuck on the wall, covering up the cracks that are deepening within society? The American dream has never been cheap. But in New York in 2025, that dream is no longer just expensive. It's becoming impossible for most workers. A rundown apartment in Manhattan now costs an average of about $3,000 a month to rent. That's not even counting utility bills, food, insurance, gas, and phone, essential expenses that people still have to manage every day. Let's do a simple calculation: $150 for electricity, $60 for phone, $200 for car insurance, $700 for food, $75 for laundry and basic supplies, plus about $200 for gas. That totals nearly $4,500 per month. That means you need at least $100 per day just to survive, not including savings, healthcare, or any unforeseen expenses. And the scary thing is, most people don't have that kind of income. According to statistics from the NYC Comptroller, nearly 60% of city residents currently spend more than half their income just to pay rent. In a city where housing prices are constantly rising, affordable housing, once a lifeline for low-income earners, is gradually disappearing. The buildings that once housed workers, retirees, and students are now being renovated into luxury apartments or Airbnbs. Investment funds buy the entire building, evict the old tenants using legal tactics, and then list the new rent at double the price. A building in the Lower East Side that once rented apartments for $1, $200 each is now listed again for $2,800 after a facade renovation. It's not about improving the quality of life, it's about improving profitability. This not only pushes the poor out of the center, but also those who are employed, but cannot keep up with the price race. A full-time waitress at a restaurant near Union Square shared, "I work 7 days a week, 2 jobs at once, but still don't make enough to rent a small apartment. Everything is increasing at a dizzying rate, while wages are cheap by the hour. I don't know how much longer I can hold on." However, the current affordable housing support system is also no longer sufficient to accommodate everyone. According to a report from the city's housing office, the waiting list for subsidized housing in NYC has now reached nearly 280,000 applications, with an average wait time of over 7 years. Meanwhile, new housing programs, such as Affordable New York, actually primarily create housing for people with high middle incomes, not for those on the brink of homelessness. New York used to be a place where, no matter your background, you still had the opportunity to live a decent life if you worked hard. But when even a roof becomes a privilege, where does that dream still exist? So what do we do with a city where losing your job for just 2 months can mean losing everything? Can we continue to urge people to hold on to hope when even the most basic things, like a place to rest, are becoming luxuries? It's time for us to face reality that housing cannot be a commodity for speculation, but must be a human right. Otherwise, New York will continue to be a city brilliant with light, but dark in human kindness. When people think of supporting the homeless, the first image that comes to mind for many is probably the shelter system. Temporary housing built by the city as a final safety net for those with nowhere else to go. Theoretically, this is a symbol of the system's humanity, a commitment that, even if you lose everything, there is still a place for you to stay. But the reality is much more complex and stark. As of early 2025, New York City had nearly 108,464 people living in temporary shelters each night. But quantity doesn't reflect quality. Those who have experienced life in a shelter describe it as a place of lost privacy, constant stress and insecurity. Not a few people after a few weeks living in a shelter chose to return to the streets, sleeping in parks, subway stations, or under bridges just to get a peaceful night's sleep. Shelter isn't bad, but the system is breaking down. Many places are severely dilapidated, lack staff, and have become hotspots for violence, psychological stress, and even infectious diseases. In surveys conducted by the Coalition for the Homeless, the number of people living in shelters who said they felt less safe than sleeping outdoors increased dramatically. A single mother said she didn't dare sleep too deeply because her daughter had been approached by bad people right inside the designated temporary shelter. The city government has introduced a new model called Safe Haven, smaller, less crowded facilities with accompanying mental health support services. This is a conceptual step forward, but it's too small in scale. The first safe haven in the Bronx only had 80 beds, while thousands of people sleep on the streets of Manhattan alone each night. Like a drop of water in the desert, no matter how good the model is, it's not enough without serious and synchronized investment. Additionally, the policy of forcibly evicting people from tent camps under the pretext of maintaining hygiene and order only worsened the situation. The homeless were evicted from their only shelter, lost their personal belongings, lost connection with social workers, and were forced to live more precariously than before. Each such sweep doesn't create a solution. It only makes the problem temporarily disappear from public view. The consequence is many people no longer trust the support system. They feel deceived by the slogans and the buildings with human services signs that are closed every time they knock in an emergency. Little by little, trust eroded, and people began to think, perhaps nothing is more trustworthy than a familiar corner of the sidewalk itself. The middle class can move away. The wealthy can build higher fences. But the homeless, who were once part of the city, now live on the margins of policies written without them in mind. When we only count the number of beds but don't measure safety, dignity, and a sense of being respected, then any policy, no matter how well presented, is just a thin coat of paint on a crumbling wall. If shelter is the last resort, but a resort that makes people feel completely stripped of their dignity, then is it no longer a place of refuge, but another version of oblivion? When we talk about the homeless crisis, we often picture adults, those who have lost their jobs, the elderly, with insufficient pensions, or individuals struggling with mental health issues. But there's another group of people, less often mentioned, but more deeply affected: children. According to the latest report from the Coalition for the Homeless, nearly 69% of families living in New York's shelter system are families with children. That's tens of thousands of children growing up in cramped temporary shelters, without desks, without playgrounds, and worrying every night whether they'll still have a bed to sleep in tomorrow. In some cases, they don't even know what a private home is, because from birth, they've only lived within mottled walls, sharing with strangers without privacy or a sense of security. Growing up in such an environment, what will form in a child's soul? Can you study well after sleeping on hard benches at the subway station last night? Can you dream when the world around you is filled with tired eyes and the sound of arguments over lack of sleeping space? And will they still believe in good things when their parents work tirelessly but still don't have enough money to rent a small room? Many education experts warn that children who grow up homeless are at a significantly higher risk of falling into a cycle of chronic poverty, dropping out of school early, experiencing psychological problems, or relying on social services throughout their adult lives. Because poverty is not just a lack of money, it's also a lack of the foundation for development, a lack of basic things like stability, safety, and a sense of being respected. We can measure the severity of the crisis by the number of people displaced, the number of tents erected, and the number of empty beds in shelters. But how do you measure the silent cracks in the soul of a child who has to grow up amidst devastation? How do you quantify the number of dreams stifled when a generation has to learn how to survive instead of how to live? A child growing up homeless not only faces material deprivation, but also carries a psychological burden, feelings of shame, isolation, and being forgotten. When you enter the classroom, the teacher doesn't always know that last night he had to shower with cold public water and use his jacket as a pillow. Those things aren't on any test, but they quietly shape the future. And that's the scariest part. The homelessness crisis isn't just a problem for today, it's a question mark for tomorrow. A society that cannot care for its most vulnerable children. Is it still worthy of their trust when they grow up? So, if the American dream was once the belief that children would have a better life than their parents, what dream will the children growing up among the rows of tents in Manhattan carry with them? No matter how strong a nation may be, if it loses its ability to protect and nurture the next generation, it is losing its very core, its ability to survive through human kindness. New York, once a symbol of prosperity, is now buckling under the weight of the very dreams that once sustained it. In every street, every subway arch, every dazzling light of Times Square, there seems to be a growing emptiness. It's not because the city lacks people, but because there are too many people living invisibly, without names, addresses, or a clear future. We can just keep scrolling as if nothing happened. You can be silent, close the curtains, and stay away from the dilapidated street corners. But the question is, are we quietly accepting a society where someone's existence is considered an inconvenience? If you grew up in an America where everyone had opportunities, where hard work could lead to a home, a community, and hope, then you must feel something is slowly slipping away. Not just once, but little by little, day by day. So what will be left for our children and grandchildren if kindness is no longer part of the urban fabric? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you believe this story needs to be shared, please like, share, and subscribe, so we can continue to tell stories that should never have been forgotten. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next journeys that might make you look at the world around you with different eyes. This video was made with the aim of reflecting a realistic slice of society based on public data, direct observation, and accounts from those involved. All content in the video is neutral analysis and does not represent any organization, individual, or political trend. We are not making absolute conclusions, condemning or blaming any party, but simply hope to open a space for reflection on what is happening around us sometimes, even when we don't want to see it. The stories are not told to scare anyone, nor to stir up unfounded anger, but to remind us that behind every number is a human being. Behind every makeshift tent lies a journey once full of hope.